The XYZ affair was a diplomatic incident involving France and the US during the late 1700s to early 1800s. The origin of the name XYZ comes from the substitution of the letters for the names of 3 French diplomats in documents released by the Adams administration. In the late 1700s, tensions arose between the newly founded French Republic and the US under the George Washington administration. The French and other European countries had gone to war earlier in 1792, which the US declared neutrality. This upsets France, as the French revolutionary government, the Directory, was experiencing problems financing its European wars and had helped the US earlier during the American Revolution. The XYZ affair all began when diplomatic relations between France and the US began to decline after numerous treaties between the US and Britain occurred. One such treaty would be the Jade Treaty, signed in 1796 to resolve issues and tension between the two nations. The Jade Treaty was a treaty of amity, commerce, and navigation between His Britannic Majesty and the United States of America by their President, with the advice and consent of their Senate. The French were offended by this treaty and believed it had violated an earlier treaty made between France and the US. French leaders decided to issue an order allowing for the seizure of American merchant ships, to raise money for their wars and to protest America's cooperation with Britain. In response to this, George Washington sent Charles Cotesworth Pinckney as a U.S. minister to France, but France declined and did not accept him. Later on, after George Washington stepped down as president, John Adams stepped up and continued to try and restore peace between the U.S. and France. To help prevent any incidents, President John Adams dispatched 3 U.S. envoys to restore harmony between the United States and France. The names of the 3 envoys were Elbridge Gerry, Charles Cotesworth Pinckney, and John Marshall. Upon arriving in France, Gerry, Pinckney, and Marshall found that they were unable to formally meet with the foreign minister, Marquis de Talleyrand. The U.S. envoys were instead approached by several intermediaries: Nicolas Hubbard, Jean Hottinger, Pierre Bellamy, and Lucien Hotteval. Hottinger, Bellamy, and Hotteval would later be known as X, Y, and Z. These intermediaries said if several conditions were to be satisfied, then the foreign minister Talleyrand would formally meet with them. The conditions were a low-interest loan, assume and pay American merchant claims against the French, and a large-scale bribe of adding up to as much as 250,000 and 10 million. The boldness of the French diplomats shocked and confused the American dignitaries.
The Americans rightfully believed these bribes would do nothing to help with the situation, except to make Talleyrand's wealth grow. Talleyrand's plan was to only increase his wealth and deal solely with Gerry, the American commissioner who seemed most friendly to the French interests. However, the deal was soon forgotten as French military victories increased their power, thirst, and their boldness. The French then changed the loan terms and threatened to invade the United States if the U.S. envoys did not agree to their terms. When the envoys refused their terms, Talleyrand dropped the terms but refused to stop raiding American ships. Gerry was the only dignitary who stayed in hopes of preventing a war. Back in America, President Adams prepared for war, and pro-war Federalists pushed Congress to support him. Democratic Party leaders were skeptical of Adams' motives and requested him to release the diplomatic correspondence describing the negotiations in France. However, prior to releasing the document, Adams replaced the names of the French intermediaries with the letters W, X, Y, and Z. Adams continued to prepare for war without openly declaring it, while the foreign minister, the Marquis de Talleyrand, scrambled to fix relations upon realizing America was not afraid to fight. Congress approved negotiations, however by then, American and French naval forces were already fighting in the Caribbean, while offering support to Toussaint Louverture in Haiti despite France. By 1799, Congress passed the Logan Acts in response to citizens attempting to meet with Talleyrand. These acts criminalized unauthorized diplomatic negotiations. During this time, Napoleon had come to power and England was thrilled at America's anti-French movement, seeing as they now had a common enemy. England then moved to assist the Americans against a common foe, revolutionary France. However, President Adams wanted to avoid a second large-scale war, much to the disappointment of England and the Federalist Party. Upon hearing this, Talleyrand let it be known that he would accept a new American diplomatic representative. The negotiators chose to annul the 1778 Treaty of Alliance and instead create a new treaty based on the 1776 Model Treaty. From this, the Convention of 1800 was born. However, this new agreement made no provisions for compensation for the seizure of U.S. merchant ships. The Senate did not ratify a finalized version of the treaty until December 18, 1801. The Convention of 1800 terminated the only formal treaty of alliance of the United States and helped the world escape what could have been the first of world wars.